Thanks, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. What a well-dressed crowd. Welcome to Brookline Booksmith. Wow, I can say the name of my store. Welcome to Brookline Booksmith's author event series. My name is Megan. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the event director here. Tonight it is my pleasure to introduce Adam Cesare, moderated by Paul Tremblay. Usually I'd say give a round of applause, but you already did that, so we're going to skip ahead. If you haven't picked up your pre-order book, or if you'd like to buy books, you can do that at the checkout at the back of the event. Thank you very much for your support in buying books with us. We are also live streaming this event. Hello, YouTube. So if you don't want to be in the live stream, don't walk in front of the iPad. Cool. Okay, I'm getting this out of the way now, saying it on purpose so I don't say it mistakenly. Corn in a Clown Field. I cannot tell you how many times I've called this series Corn in a Clown Field by accident. Okay.
We'll get to that sequel.
Yeah, I know. It's like it's a horror of a different kind. I've got that out of my system. Maybe I'll say the name right. Anyway, it is always a pleasure to have moderator Paul Tremblay here with us. Paul has won the Bram Stoker British Fantasy and Massachusetts Book Awards and is the nationally best-selling author of The Beast You Are, The Pallbearers Club, Survivor Song, Growing Things and Other Stories, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, A Head Full of Ghosts, and the crime novels The Little Sleep and No Sleep Till Wonderland. His novel, The Cabin at the End of the World, was adapted into the Universal Pictures film Knock at the Cabin. I am very pleased to welcome Adam Cesare. He is the author of the Bram Stoker award-winning Clown in a Cornfield series.
Yeah!
All right. Thank you. I can read. The graphic novel Dead Mall and several other novels and novellas, including the cult hit Video Night and the YA psycho thriller Influencer. An avid fan of horror cinema, you can watch him talk about movies on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, and the rest of his socials. He's a busy man. I'm exhausted reading it. The thrills and chills are far from over in the third novel from Bram Stoker Award winner and master of scare, horror legend Adam Cesare. Quinn has just survived yet another bloody run-in with the murderous clown friendo, but somehow still she knows this won't be the last. Tired of being hunted and seeing innocent people hurt, Quinn believes the only way to beat the horror is to take justice into her own hands and stop the friendo followers herself. Little does she know that this path will take her across cornfields and state lines to where she will have to face the most dangerous and bloody menace yet, true believers. I'm excited to hear more about those thrills and chills, so I will now hand the stage over to Adam Cesare and Paul Tremblay.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see a lot of familiar faces out here and a lot more horror t-shirts. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
The first question.
I'm doing great. Oh, that's the official start. Okay.
Sure. So I've known Adam for a long time, which is kind of hard to believe because he's like a fetus. That's how young he is compared to me. That's a little young, but
I'm losing the baby face.
That's how we start. We got to build the pyramid. We build the base low, and then we'll build up high. All right. Anyways, let's talk about a basic question, like what was the kernel of this particular book? Well, maybe we'll touch on 1 and 2 later, but.
It's interesting because I've been so kind of spoiler phobic on this book and just telling people what it's about that when Megan read that ad copy, I'm like, okay, I kind of barely read it, like when Harper sent it, and I was like, yeah, guys, whatever, just keep it really vague, and like all the thrills and chills and stuff like that. It sounds like very silly ad copy, but I guess it's on all the books now. So I've been trying to like keep under wraps like what the exact plot is, but we're not going to spoil everything, but we'll talk a little bit plot stuff. But the seed of the idea was I was brought to. I rarely get to do like teen-facing events. These are books intended for teens, so I'm always kind of like if a library or librarian like wants to bring me out, I want to go, especially if it's talking to teens. So I was flown out to a library in the DFW area. And as they were driving
What's
me out.
DFW?
Oh, Dallas Fort Worth. So it's in Texas. I was flying out to Texas. Thank you. I forgot. I was just in Houston, so I was like, oh yeah, DFW. They'll all know. You're in Massachusetts. this story is good. Believe me, it takes a second to get going. But librarian picks me up from the airport, and I'm like, this is like a multi-author event. Like, oh, how many? You got so many like big name authors. This is gonna be so cool. Like, how many kids do you have coming out? And they're like, oh, we work with all the sending districts in the area, and they send like, even though it's on a Saturday, they send like 300, 400, we've had 500 kids come to this thing, and they all get a free book, and everyone has a great time. Well, the week before this event, a guy had walked into like a story time, like I think like a drag story time, like with a long rifle at like the library, like in the next district over, and all the high schools that were going to send all these kids were like, it's too much of a liability. We can't send all these kids. So it was this big, huge event where they brought all these people in. It was empty. There was like maybe 20 kids that had begged their parents to bring them, and all these authors had come out, and the librarians were like on the verge of crying and stuff like that. And the first book is about all these. The villains are basically like, we have to go back to an imagined America. We have to go back to like Norman Rockwell. We have to this Reagan era idea of everything was better when we had malt shops and stuff like that. And the villains in this one, to an extent, there's a lot of subplots, which we'll talk about too. But it's that idea of like, I was like, well, these a-holes like don't want to bring us back to malt shops. They want to bring us back to like the Stone Age. They want to bring us back to like the dawn of America, like, and start fresh. And that was from that interaction.
Right. Yeah, and their vision of the dawn of America, not the actual.
Oh yeah, no, they're so historically inaccurate. That's why, yeah, they don't have to do any research. But
I keep changing glasses. One pair to see him and one to see my questions. Sorry.
You can just stick on the questions. Like I could be an atom-shaped blob that you kind of remember what I look like.
All right. Well, I mean, so it is a trilogy. So I've never written a trilogy or even a series. So I'm very curious. Like, did you intend a trilogy? Like with the first book? Like, when did you know? Oh, there could be multiple stories here.
Well, what's funny is like a lot of times with YA, a lot of times with series, like you just kind of sell them as a series and you know that you're going that way. I did not for the first book, and this was my first. This is with Harper Teen. It was my first kind of after like 10, 11 years in like the small press. First time at bat, getting like a bigger book out there, and just kind of imagining, because I'm like a Debbie Downer, being like, well, they'll never be allowed to do this again. So thinking that it was just going to be a standalone. But there's like an epilogue in the first book that is, the classic slasher, Jason jumping out of a lake, like things like that just to me felt like something you did when you write a slasher. And then I got so dinged so hard on every Goodreads review, being like, this guy setting up the sequel, just like, we're gonna stringing us along, and I was like, no, I didn't intend that. But then the first book did well, so joke's on them. We're all here for 3.
Don't read Goodreads reviews.
It was the first time. I had to try.
Okay, all right. I'll cut you some slack.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm curious, because we'll talk more about the new book too, but actually this is more in reference to the new book. So I assume, like, with 2 books under your belt, you obviously have to, in some way, have the connection, between the previous books. Yeah. But also, you're trying to write for maybe someone who just sees this book and picks it up.
No, I'm not.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. No. Like I'll do that all the time, where people will be like, "Oh, can I pick this one up?" Or is it like they think it's maybe anthology format and stuff like that? And I'm like, no, you'll be so fucking lost. Don't do that. What I try to do is I'll try to meet people halfway, because some people will tell me, "Oh, I'm rereading the first 2 right now," and I'm like not a big rereader. So what I try to do is like gently remind people who these characters are in situations that are being referenced from 2 books ago or the last book, because they are kind of made to order. They're bespoke. They don't come out right in a row. So there are 2 years between each one. And I was like, if I had 2 years between each one, what would I generally need to be reminded of? And I try to do that.
For me, it would be everything.
Oh, yeah. Well, I also, yeah.
Interesting. So, like, I was going to ask about the balance between new and old characters. So you really weren't worried about that, other than what you just said. Slight little callbacks to. I also the main character Quinn,
yes,
which we'll talk about. But
I think there's the balancing act of wanting to. A lot of it's funny because these books get compared to the Scream films a lot. And when I talk about slashers, I give this preemptively. I usually talk about slashers as the filmic slasher. I think of it as a filmic genre, even though we're talking about books. I do read books. Believe me. We're just talking about it. He can vouch for me. I read books. Like the Scream series, to me, now I'm gonna people are gonna get their knives out. Like I think they're diminishing returns almost a direct line for me because of how Teflon some of the characters become, and because you don't want to kill some off. But I think in these books I try to strike a balance of even characters I don't want to get rid of. I want to at least see them a little bit and then bring in new characters, because that's part of the fun is that character invention. Also, if you've only known them for one book, we're blowing a head off or two, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun reading almost over the same time period, your trilogy and Stephen Graham Jones's slasher trilogy, and no one is safe.
Oh yeah, especially not in Stephen's book, especially not in book 3 of, I've told this story before, but it's good. It's a good, but I'm a huge Stephen Graham Jones fan, and the book that I read and kind of rewarded myself with after handing in the manuscript of this, or going over copy edits or whatever stage it was. It was no take back stage. But I read Angel of Indian Lake, which is the third book in the Jade Daniels trilogy, and I was just like, thank God I didn't read it beforehand, or I didn't read it during. Thank God I saved it, because I would have almost tried to change things, because there's interesting parallels that happen. There's even same bodily trauma happens between Jade and Quinn, and I would have just been tried to make it. It's the don't copy my homework meme. I would have but it's I really swear I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, with Quinn, I have written down here with Jade and Quinn hang out.
Oh no, I don't know. Maybe. I think that's the thing. Jade's, they're interesting characters in that the series are interesting in placing them. They're almost complete inverses. I think Dr. Jones's series is all meta, and is all is following a final girl that is obsessed with the idea of final girls, and is this almost final girl, and she's reluctant final girl in training because she keeps trying to put the duty of final girl onto other characters in the book, and it's because she's so cognizant of the slasher genre. And my thought wasn't because of Stephen, but it was because I wanted these books there for a teen audience. I wanted teenagers who read them to require no prior knowledge. I didn't want them to be winky and jokey and meta and about slasher movies, because I was like, you needed no preconceived, you needed no information. If this is your first horror book, whether you're an adult horror reader, or you're an adult reader who doesn't read horror, or you're a teen who's not, we were just talking about this, where you don't have this base of knowledge of movies from before you were born. Right. I didn't want to have that, and it just so happened that these trilogies came out around the same time, and thank God, because I would have gotten absolutely taken to the mat by Stephen Graham Jones. It's great. I'm so glad that I sidestepped that completely. Yeah.
That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that part of it, but I mean that's really smart to assume,
assume no prior knowledge. Yeah.
Although I'm somewhat fascinated by how much cultural knowledge do teens have. Just for example, if they're watching TV and they see that Geico commercial where there's people being chased by the chainsaw guy.
Will they know that that's a genre convention? Will they know that that's a? Yeah, I think I'm sure there's varying levels of savvy with this stuff, but I wanted to baseline be what if you had no knowledge of this stuff?
I wish I kind of read these books knowing that, because I would have been looking for how you did that. That's interesting. So I know you're careful, you don't want to give too many spoilers or much of the scaffolding, but I did want to ask you, or I want to observe that this book is in some ways a departure from the first two, at least in terms of setting and setup. So,
yes.
I mean, what do you feel comfortable saying?
We can talk about the road novel aspect of this, because I think if you've read the second book ends with this epilogue where Quinn is basically doing what I've realized post publication is the ending to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where they go and they kick everyone's ass that were dicks to them on the internet, and they just use their money to go door to door to do that. So this is the more serious version of that. So we set up that in the epilogue, and I do these things where I set little teases up in epilogues, and now so you think you know what the next book's gonna be, but then I want to I want to give you your cake, and it's like, oh no, it's too much cake. Oh no, actually, I'm full now, I'm good, and then I just keep giving you cake. So I don't want to deliver on the expectation of that final chapter in the way that you want it. But it's a road novel. It's her on her revenge quest, or at least part of the novel is.
So there's no cornfield.
There's no cornfield in this one. I didn't realize it. I was hoping my editor didn't realize it. And then it was like the first thing he said on like the notes call. He was like, there's no cornfield here. And then I had to be like, no, the cornfield's in your mind. Like there isn't. The cornfield's in your mind. But what's funny is that it's almost a spoiler to say, but there's an attempt at a cornfield, which is pretty funny. Like that they can't grow it. They can't get it going. There's cornfield interruptus.
That's book 5.
Yeah. Oh, no, yeah.
Let's go back to Quinn, because this book is so much fun. It's really dark.
Thank you.
And I kept going, man, I can't believe you could do that in YA. Like, there's some of the violent stuff. It's not to say it was gratuitous or overboard.
Some of it is.
It all fit the story, but I was like, wow, I mean, that's really cool. So I had so many questions about your editor who just wanted to know. That's all he wanted was a cornfield. He couldn't care.
Yeah, that was the first complaint. Where's the cornfield? As I'm just doing the most horrific shit.
I have some editorial questions. Not like anything you did bad, but I'm curious.
Okay, cool.
But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit more
they printed them. It's can't, okay.
But I do want to talk a little bit more about Quinn. So, you wrote the first book with no idea of what 3 would be, never mind 2.
No, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know, so do you look back at Quinn from book 1? Would she recognize herself from 1 to 3, or?
No, and that's kind of part of that feels like part of almost the thematics. I think of that as growing up too. I think of that as even though this book gets in some wilder territory, I think that's a relatable idea for teens. If you even consider just the span of high school, how you start as a freshman and then how you mature into the person that you are. But there's also a lot of situations, and I remember at the end of high school, not liking the person I was by the end of that process. And I wasn't going around, sleeping in parking lots and cracking skulls, but, it's applicable, and it's this idea of, she becomes something that she wouldn't recognize. And someone had brought up, I was just on Talking Scare podcast with Neil.
Someone here just told me they were listening to it. Who was it?
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good interview if you want to listen to it. If you want to hear some of the same anecdotes, just slightly better, because I'm fresher there. But
and with an interviewer who speaks better with a British accent.
Oh yeah, he's good. It's good. It's like velvet. But he had pointed out that Quinn is a different kind of teen protagonist in that he had juxtaposed it to the Twilight movies or books, and how Bella Swan moves to a new place and then sits in her room and mopes for a year. You watch the seasons change. But Quinn is moving to Kettle Springs in the first book because of her dad, and she wants to do it because she wants to do a nice thing for a man that's suffered a tragedy, and that she is supportive and understanding and very competent. She has a baseline competency at the beginning of these books that almost she loses. She becomes less competent and less empathetic by the third book because of the things she's been forced to do and the world she's been forced to live in. And the book 3 is a little bit of the question of, can you get it back? It's it's not death wish revenge. It's Park Chan-wook revenge a little bit more.
Teenagers, anybody know who that is? I'm just kidding.
Oh no, I did it again. I did assumed knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I'll let you say what you want to say, and if it's nothing, that's fine. I just want to ask about, or just bring up a couple of the third book specific characters.
Okay.
Johnny D. You want to say anything about Johnny D?
Johnny D is a juggalo, and I had gotten it's so funny because when you all I do is
it's like you're reading off my sheet. Johnny D is a juggalo.
Okay, yeah. When I feel the need to promote and make myself as available as possible, but in some situations, anytime you're on YouTube or live or whatever, people will look at the books that admittedly, I like to say the joke starts and ends with the title and the font. Climb the Cornfield, you're imagining something, it's 2 Stephen King stories in one, and they even use the Stephen King font, and then it gives you something that you're not expecting. It gives you a fairly straightforward, fairly sober I'm too much of a wise ass to not have a little humor in there, but like it's more John Carpenter than Stephen King is what I like to say. But when you're in chat rooms, what am I talking about? When you're in AOL Instant Messenger, and when you're, but like when you're like on these internet spaces and people want to take a swing at you, they'll make jokes about it. Oh, is this about juggalos? Yeah. And then I just wanted to take that joke and be like, these books are all about acknowledging the inherent humanity in people, even when they're doing the complete wrong thing, and even when they're like disgusting and morally reprehensible. And the idea that we can create a joke out of like a subsection of people, like based on the kinds of music they listen to, is a little bit like antithetical to, or it fits right in with the book. So Johnny D is Quinn's unwitting buddy cop pairing in this book. So that's more than I've ever actually talked about it. But hey, we're 3 days out from release, so I'm going to talk about it. But I love that character very much, and I wanted to give someone who is openly human and emotional to Quinn, who's become, I've used this bit before, but slasher final girls, especially in reboots and stuff like that, Jamie Lee Curtis, we turn them into Neve Campbell, we turn them into Sarah Connor, like, who is a fully aspirational character. What if we turn them into the Punisher, who is a character who has a lot of morally gray issues? Like, so that was the idea behind Quinn in this one.
I'm going to totally undercut your beautiful, humane response and make fun of both Neil's accent and Juggalos.
Okay, good. Do it.
I will listen to that podcast if he says whoop whoop in his British accent.
He had no idea what a Juggalo was. I don't think they have him over there. He was like, I had to look it up. Mate. And I was like, oh, you should listen to the Great Malenko. Like, yeah.
And I'm going to say in a weird way, I felt like it was a shout out to when Adam and I first met at Rock and Shock. Which was a convention they used to have back in Worcester.
Oh yeah.
So they would always have I think the first year I went was Guar was the band. I think the last year I went it was Insane Clown Posse.
It's Insane Clown Posse, and they always had Twisted. They always had like an Insane Clown Posse associated act. And what we would go sell at these conventions, and then there would be Juggalo Day, because it would be the day that everyone was playing, and you would hear a lot of from the Juggalos. I don't read books, stuff like that. But what's so interesting about this book getting announced is someone reached out to me on Facebook without knowing the content of the third book and said, I run a Juggalo book club and I'm trying to get other Juggalos reading, and we love the first 2 books. And I was like, I can't fucking believe I'm talking to you right now. You are gonna love 3 so much. It's exactly what the book's talking about. I'm not making this stuff up. This reaching across the aisle to who we perceive to be in a different space than us. It's like Juggalo book club. I was so happy to talk to that dude.
Adam bringing people together. I love it.
Yeah, that's true. I am Mr. Touchy-Feely.
All right, now let's tear people apart here.
Oh, yeah.
So I want to actually just some editing questions, and hopefully this is somewhat interesting.
This is interesting?
Very interesting to.
Yeah. Oh, they love it. Look at.
Yeah. Okay, nothing bad, but like one.
Nothing bad.
Well, let me go. So, I'm curious, have you had any political pushback on either of the books, or this one in particular, without getting too over? I mean, I love it, but you are quite critical of organized religion.
Certain
certain
dogmas, and I think there's a counter in the book itself with the Tabitha character, who is a person of faith, and her faith is what keeps her going and what keeps her wanting to protect her community. So I don't think that the only people ask all the time that the easy. Or not the easy interview question is, how do you get away with all the violence? Like, these books are like rated R, and it's usually for people who don't read a lot of YA. And it's like, no, this YA has evolved, and you can do certain things in it. So people always think that I've had editorial notes of you need to turn this back. Like, we crush a guy's head with a copier here at Kinko's, and it's the gnarliest score. I'm and they didn't blink at that. But when I sent along the name, when I said Clown in Cornfield 3, the Church of Friendo, that was the one time I ever got kind of creative pushback on all 3 of the books was, you have to say church. You have to call it church in there. Can you say cult? And I'm like, no, it was like a cult in 2. I don't want it. It's not, it's different. No, it's a church. Which, to their credit, they folded, but they did ask. That was the one time they asked. And I think people who, one start the first book because of certain aspects of it, that are political or they feel attacked in some way, which I actually don't kind of think. They're being attacked.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to look at the subtitle of book 3 and get that 1-star ready, like because they're going to think it's one thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's preloaded. It's preloaded with this idea. The book focuses on different subcultures, different juggalos,
Yeah.
wrestlers. Like there's this idea that you can find church and you can find worship outside of religion, and that can be something that is not only avocational, but it can keep you alive in a way. Like, and I think that's so. I think yes, there's easy kind of righteous gemstones level jokes at religion here, but I think religion's a big boy; it can take it. But I do think there's another reading of this book that is pro these things. Like,
Interesting. You're so smart. So, not even the violence. We talked about this a little bit at dinner. The idea, like, because you reference so many things that are current, happening now. In my very brief, I have a middle grade novel coming out next summer, experience, there was some sales pushback on like, oh, you're gonna age the book.
The book, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, because
by
you were
referencing something,
referencing.
by referencing
Do you want to bring it up?
now.
Or you
No,
don't
I
want
was
to
going to
talk?
ask you, like, did you get any of that sort of commentary on yours? And you said you had a rant on.
Oh, like the idea of, I think we talk about the term dated, use dated, and people usually use it with movies. And because 90% of the movies I watch are from 1990 or before, I always encounter it when I talk about, a film from the 60s. People are like, but it's so dated. I'm like, you mean they have rotary phones? Like, that's so odd. Like, dated to me is not like if there's outdated ideas towards race or gender or things like that. I think that's perfectly permissible to and encouraged to challenge these ideas and these social mores. But I think the idea of talking about like, oh, their shirts fit funny, and like they're wearing 70s clothes or something like that is not that's a bonus for me. That goes in the plus column, not in the minus column, because it does date it. It dates it. It lets you know. It gives you a peer into what life was like when this film was made, when this book was written, when it was produced. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think things should be dated because they should be speaking to when they are released, and then they should also, retroactively, you should be able to look back and be like, what were people thinking, doing, acting like then? So I think dated, it's such a weird word, and to try to turn into a slam, because to me it's not a slam.
So in 2024, it was smashing heads with photocopiers.
Yeah, no, that's all anyone was talking about, all anyone was doing. We lost, there are no FedEx Kinkos anymore, right? They've changed the branding and stuff, so it's too many head
there's
smashings.
FedEx.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But not Kinkos.
I don't know. I'm trying to riff here, it's not going great, yeah.
Is this your first event at the Booksmith?
Yeah. But I've gone to so many events here as a fan.
Well, let me ask you a few just sort of Adam origin story questions.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
Well, just first, before we get to the writer, origin story as a horror fan, like what turned you, or is there something you can credit?
I was just talking. It's funny. I was just talking about this idea of everyone has their own legend of the man who shot Liberty Valance, like print the legend thing. That I feel like all writers have this, like, oh yeah, it was this movie at this time that did this to me, and then I was a horror fan forever. And I think it's if we're being honest with ourselves, it's more of a slow accrual process. And I kind of want to hear your answer to this at the end. So can you give us your answer?
No.
Do you have one of those phony things?
No, it definitely not one. It was just more like creature double feature, and there were just horror movies on. I just watched them.
There we go. That's, I think, is so much more honest answer, because I think my real answer is walking past our Pathmark, our supermarket chain had it was before Blockbuster completely took over, and they had a little video rental section.
Yeah.
So I remember walking past the horror things and just always being pulled, like, oh, that's interesting, and it scares me, even before I could watch the movies.
Yeah.
And then my father's a huge movie guy, and he would take me out of school all the time, but he liked every genre but horror. So I think, if we're just gonna fully psychoanalyze me, I think there was the idea that, well, that can be mine. Like if my dad has everything else, that'll be my thing. But I think there's more to it than that. I think there's more just general aesthetic pleasures of horror.
Fine. Well, when did you first start writing?
I was I went to school in Boston. I was a film student, and I was focusing on screenwriting. And around the time I met you, I was going to Rock and Shock, and I met Jack Ketchum there, and I was big fans of these people and of writers, and I wasn't ever thinking of it as like I can do that thing until I started to get really kind of economically uneasy with the idea of having to move to LA, be a screenwriter. It scares me so much. Like the people that can do that and thrive at it, and like, I don't know. I think of like, not to bring up Park Chan-wook again, but it's like that idea of like sitting in a cage and how Dae-soo like goes a little crazy. Like, so it must be so hard to keep writing stuff and keep getting rejection and keep taking meetings and just be in that kind of Kafkaesque scene. So I just didn't want to do it. And I was like, what else can I do? What else can I do quickly before school runs out? I was like, I can write books, because I had read Joe Lansdale's The Drive-In around then, and that was the really, not to say that I had a real lightning strike moment, but I did. I read that book, and I was like, this book is about movies, and it's so smart, and it's also so crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and it also has it includes a character called the Popcorn King, who is two teens who sit on each other's, one sits on the other one's shoulders, and they become fused into one big flesh monster.
Yeah.
So like, but I think it's one of the best philosophical novels ever written. So like, I think that's my whole little aesthetic. If I took it from anyone, I took it from that book, and the idea that you can write about these ideas and you can be full-throated in your grindhouse B-movie love of the genre, of that side of the genre, like not so much the Mr. Tremblay side of the genre. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think like there is that divide, like of like lizard brain, smarty brain, you know, like which I just like. And I also love your work. Paul and I had dinner before this, and he had to like listen to me just be like, you remember that part in Horror Movie where like he had like the full Chris Farley. I gave him like the full Chris Farley at dinner. But I love your work so much, but I also just think I'm self-aware enough to see the very stark differences, like, you know, in aims and goals and thematics and yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, I'm honored. But also, I mean, there's so many different ways to tell a horror story, which is like really the exciting part of everything that's happening sort of in the genre right now.
Oh yeah.
All right, before we go to my lightning round, I'm sure maybe other people ask more details, but I want to, the first book has been filmed.
Oh yeah,
It's in the can.
Yep, it's in the can.
It's in the can.
Yep.
He got to go to Winnipeg for a day to see.
Yeah.
To
The
find,
Hollywood
He had to find the corn. They had to go to Winnipeg to find the corn. So maybe just a little bit about that.
So the movie, it's produced by Temple Hill, who the last horror movie they did was Smile. And the director is Eli Craig, who did Tucker and Dale versus Evil. You've seen that one? One of my favorite slasher kills of the 20th century. That guy jumping into the wood chipper and going, "All these teens are killing themselves!" Like, yeah. So like, I was super pumped to meet him. He was so cool, and like we did like meetings. He like took a call with me like while they were in production offices, and I like saw all like. I knew it had to be like they were working really hard, and I was like, you don't need to be on this call with me right now, like, dude. But I went up for the if you read the first book, I went up for the parade scene. So I got to basically walk around Kettle Springs. They like turned this street in Winnipeg into Kettle Springs, and it was so wild. Like even down to like not only the license plates, but like down to like the newspaper boxes. They had covered them up with like Missouri Sentinel like things, and I was just like, this is fucking wild. Like, because also I've been writing in this town for like 6 years, because books take a long time. So like it was very surreal and very cool.
Did it feel like it came right out of your head, or was it more just like, oh no, this is definitely of my thing, but it's not exactly?
No, what's interesting is there was a movie theater on the street too. Like it looked exactly like it. Like they just happened to location scout this place that had the defunct movie theater, and I'm like, that's not even like that's mentioned in the first book like really quickly. Yeah. That's the Eureka. Like I'm like, it was so like it was very, very strange. Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Do you have a release date? Do you know?
No, I don't. Yeah. And if I did, there'd be like someone in the audience has like a blow dart that like
No.
yeah. They're like, oh no, how does that have plutonium poisoning? Yeah.
All right, so before we go to questions from you all in the audience, I have a lightning round.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be lightning.
I'm gonna drink some water
Yeah.
first.
Please do. So quiet now. I was gonna make a joke about, because of your Boston, going to school in Boston, like the original screenplay was Clown on Commonwealth Ave. But
Yeah.
time is now.
Clown at Com Ave. Yeah.
All right, how many?
Friendo Ked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll say within 10, plus or minus 10. How many DVDs do you own?
It's in the thousands.
Thousands?
Oh, for sure. Because I have the stuff that you can. If you watch my YouTube channel, it's got it. I've been doing this shit for 10 years and I still can't say it right. But if you see my office and stuff, when you look at like TikTok and stuff like that, that's just like the collector stuff that I have out, and then I have all my DVDs. Those are all Blu-rays, and then I have all my DVDs. So it's in the thousands.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, in the chat room. No, sorry.
Sorry, Chet.
All right. Oh, I had a follow-up to the DVD. Oh, do you watch them all? Like, do you even watch?
Oh no, it's just a
do you watch,
sickness.
like,
It's just a complete like anyone who does this, anyone who we call it like like I have friends that my good friend Scott Cole, who's a wonderful writer, he calls it hashtag the sickness. Like anytime I bring up, like I'll tell him like, oh my God, there's Caligula's coming out, but there's an Australian version that has different commentaries than the U.S. version, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna pick him up the both. Like, and he'll just write hashtag the sickness, and like that'll be his only response because he's like, what's wrong with you? So like I do watch a lot of movies, but
if you do watch them, do you watch like all the extra tracks and stuff?
Yeah, I do. Like I try to like, especially if I like a movie, and especially if it's like a nice addition, I'll break the bones and suck the marrow on like the special features and stuff like that. I like living in a movie a little bit.
All right. So the next two questions involve a choice, and you can't like waffle.
Okay.
You can't explain. You can't apologize. You just have to give an answer. I mean, you can explain.
I should have asked for a heads
It's
up
your
on
night.
these.
You can do what you want. Arrow or vinegar syndrome.
VS. I gotta every.
He calls it BS.
Yeah, no. I was wearing last night in Houston. I was wearing a Vinegar Syndrome shirt. It's like half my wife has to like look at the lady with the little yellow leg on everything. I'm just I love them both. But,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think this question is much easier, frankly. But Hereditary or Midsommar?
Oh, Midsummer. That's so easy. That one's so easy. That one's so easy for me.
Wrong. Next question.
Why don't you tell me what you think?
What the hell did I write here? Oh, I want a movie that, because I sometimes make fun of you, like, oh, you like everything.
Yeah.
You're not as bad as Stephen Graham Jones.
Stephen Graham Jones likes everything.
Although he'll sneakily send me texts and be like, oh, I hated this. I'm like, you never do this in public.
Stephen Graham Jones. One of the first essays I read by Stephen Graham Jones was on his website, and it was just this long explication of how good Cry Wolf is with John Bon Jovi, and I'm like, what is happening? Like, so I'm not that. Like, I'm not.
Probably not.
But I'm an easy audience.
Okay, so with this in mind, I want you to name a movie you don't like. I'm not saying you hate. Name a movie you don't like that everyone else does. Can you think of one?
Dude,
Or not everyone else, but
YouTube's watching.
Oh, but yeah, okay, maybe that's unfair since you like talk about movies and stuff. Doesn't even
I'll
have to,
give you
doesn't
one.
even
I'll
have
give
to
you
be
one.
horror.
I'll
It
give
could
you
be
one
any
because
movie.
I like most of Radio Silence's other movies. I did not like Ready or Not. I'm sorry. They're like, look, I got people are. Oh no, they're. I thought you were gonna. I thought you were gonna hurt me.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh God, I got such a tummy ache. Oh.
I had to give you one hard one. Doesn't have to be like favorite or scariest, but maybe the first that comes to mind. I was going to ask like the scariest or favorite YA horror novel that you've read.
Is it really? She writes it under another, like I think this is her pseudonym, but Danielle Vega wrote a book called The Merciless, which was very like similar to how
Like a possession?
it's a possession story, but it's like The Exorcist meets The Girl Next Door. It's like it's these girls get together, and it's like a Mean Girls type thing where they're trying to exorcise one girl, and they're just fucking torturing her. So like it's so good, but there's sequels too,
Yeah.
but it like to tell you the twist is like almost to reveal too much. But it that similar to Joe Lansdale's The Drive-In, that was the book in reading for research to prepare to write a YA book. I like started reading that, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like and it was so freeing because I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like I get to you can just hack them up. Like yeah, and that was
No,
that,
I had
yeah.
no idea. I am actually.
It's
Because
really
I remember seeing the cover of that book came out.
it's
It came out.
pink and it has like a pentagram on it. It's like got a really cool cover.
Yeah, so I kind of assumed it was like, oh, it was going to be sort of like a comedy.
No.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
like if the girls from Mean Girls were like, oh, let's take Lindsay Lohan and like tear her fingernails off. Like yeah.
All right.
She's the one that wrote it. I didn't write it.
No. I said all right, like I'm into it. I would throw one title out that it's called The Nest by Kenneth Opel. Because I had a friend, Mallory Mara. Do you know Mallory? Mallory wrote
The Creature from the Black
The Woman, The Woman from the Black Lagoon. History of the woman who was sort of like erased from history, who actually designed most of the creature suits. So she writes a lot of nonfiction stuff. Anyway, she used to live in this area, so we were friends because before she moved out to LA. She's like, oh, you got to read this book. It's amazing. And people give recs all the time. Sometimes you take them, sometimes you don't. But she took it a step further and actually physically mailed me
nice.
a copy of the book. And
That's
so
how you know it's true.
Yeah, I read it and I was like, oh, like it was so. I was like, I didn't know you could do this in middle grade. It was just so. It was really
It's
scary.
middle grade?
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's really scary and beautifully written.
Cool.
Yeah,
I'll
I highly recommend it. All right, a couple more and then we'll go to audience. Coke or Pepsi?
Diet Coke.
Half. We'll give you half. If you had said Pepsi, I would
Sammy's got
have
it.
flipped the table.
Yeah.
Your favorite ICP song?
What is a Juggalo?
Okay.
Which people want me to say like Miracles or something like that, but yeah. What is a Juggalo explains the ethos behind what a Juggalo is, but it's also contradictory.
They
It
just
goes,
had
what
the,
is
they
a
just had the
Juggalo?
gathering of the Juggalos. You should have had that.
I know. I wish the book came out a week earlier because I would have tried to do something with that, but it just didn't happen.
Alas.
Alas.
All right. How about questions from you all? Yeah.
Every time I suggest one of your books, I always talk about how it's paced like a horror movie.
Mhm.
Do you think your experience, like, I didn't know you were a screenwriter before this, but do you think that helped, like, pace it like a horror movie? Because I've never read something that's, like, paced exactly like a slasher movie.
I appreciate that, and I think it's less screenwriting and more like of what we were talking about, like the film fetishism and the idea that when I was writing the first Clown in the Cornfield book, I haven't done this before or since, and I thought I was gonna do it with this one because this one has a lot of folk horror in it. I thought I was gonna watch just folk horror movies, but there's only so much like black and white fire you can like watch like burning like this, like before you're like I need something else. But with the first book, I had been like I am going to beat this thing out exactly like a slasher, and I'm gonna find like because my one gripe with Scream, and I think Kevin Williams is a genius. I think Wes Craven is the greatest person to ever live. But my one thing with Scream is that the rules in Scream, Randy's rules in Scream, are bullshit. They don't actually map onto any real slasher movies. So like, or they don't go onto the average or the mean. So my idea was, let me just watch a good mix of stuff I've seen before and stuff I haven't seen before. And I watched like 150, 200 slasher movies and just watched slasher movies while I was drafting the first one. So it's that dedication to the bit. It's that obsessiveness that hopefully worked. So thank you.
Did you watch that like 6-hour documentary on folk horror?
Oh yeah, the Carola Janice.
Yeah.
They just announced another. Not to make this a Severin video, Severin Films like news podcast. But they're doing another set. They're doing another 24 film. They're doing.
Let's go here.
Yeah. Hi. So I really love the first book, how we are introduced to Frendo and how he was important to like the Great Depression and stuff like that. And I love that history. And I wanted to know what like research was done for that. What was the inspiration for that, and the character of Frendo?
It comes from that. It comes from almost back converted of like I wanted a clown mask that looked a certain way and could have been produced a certain way, and a clown character that would have fit in a time period, and especially because of the economic ramifications, and you have Kettle Springs having its like because of Bay Pen closing, having its like second Great Depression kind of when the book starts. I wanted to just take from that time period. And I wanted him to have a little pork pie hat. I wanted him to look a certain way that even his naming convention, all those clowns were ending in vowels, ending in O, and friend O just became it's a No Country for Old Men reference. Yeah, so because I was just like, oh, with an O, friend O. Yeah.
The back.
To build on that, as a former Iowan, I loved all of the commentary.
Hell yeah.
The corn syrup, the corn subsidies, the rotting piles of corn.
Oh yeah.
So,
Glenn has a bad time in this. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about real life inspiration that you might have taken from this Midwest issue that's going on right now.
I just think it's wild that we just grow so much corn that we don't even we grow corn we never intend. It goes in the ground never intending to reach a mouth. It just seems so strange to me, and it seems so American in a way, and it seems so interesting to play with that. It's that idea of the beginning, the joke beginning and the ending on the cover, where no one's picking up a book called Clown in the Cornfield thinking that I'm gonna talk about corn subsidies and and tax breaks on crops and stuff like that, and incentivize farming and things like that. But I'm like, let's fucking do it. Let's go. We put corn syrup in everything. There's corn in everything you ate today. It's crazy that there's corn in everything you ate today. Isn't that wild? I sound like a lunatic. I sound like I should be handing you out pamphlets on ComAv. Hey, I've got a great.
I'm trying to think about what I ate today. Yeah, maybe.
I bet. I watch you eat.
I had corn pops for breakfast.
There we go.
I did not
But
have
even just in the sweeteners or the things that are in, yeah.
Now I'm depressed. All right. Over here.
What was your favorite slasher?
Ooh. I don't like giving the normal answer, but my normal answer is my real answer. I love Michael. I even like him in the movies that no one likes. Because I think it shows the elasticity of the slasher. I think that the Halloween series is fascinating. Even the fact that I think there's more bad ones than good ones. I still like the ones I don't like, and I still look back on them fondly as that's a versatile, because he has the shape, because he is a blank. That's a versatile image that a lot of people can even get wrong when they're working in the same series, if that makes sense. And I love that, and I'm a huge. People are gonna be able to tell that I'm a big fan of the David Gordon Green trilogy, because when the first book came out, similar to the Stephen thing, similar to the Angel of Indian Lake, there's flies all over it. Which there's flies on the cover of the book. How fucking cool is that? I kind of gave myself a treat, first draft. I think first draft of the first book. Was around when the first of the three David Gordon Green Halloween trilogies came out, and I was so surprised how much gunplay is in that movie, because there's so much gun stuff in Clown, and it kind of was another one of those. I was finger on the pulse at him, even though publishing takes forever, and it'll be 2 years after, and no one will know that it was finger on the pulse, but it was.
All right. Well, again, you just gave me another answer. You say you like everything. I did least favorite slasher.
Least favorite slasher. Oh no. I can't. That's the thing. I can't. I have a hard time even thinking of a bad one. But my least favorite of the main.
Sure.
What do we say? The main triptych, or
You can expand it out.
No, I don't. I can't even think hard enough to think that I have a least favorite. I'll go contemporary. A lot of the contemporary retro slashers.
Yeah.
A lot of the ones that are pretending to be a return to the old school 80s vibe, and they all get it wrong, because they all turn the kids into a-holes. You all on this whole, and it's kind of died away. It doesn't really exist anymore.
Violent Nature specifically?
No. I really liked In a Violent Nature. So there you go. No, I do like everything, but I do. I think I have. If you want me to talk for an hour while I like In Violent Nature, I can. But it was way before that. It's this idea of movies that were specifically marketed as a return to form for the slasher. All did this thing where they kind of disregarded the fact that the best movies in the genre are hangout movies, where you want to see the kids have a good time, and then they turn kind of into tragedies once you start killing them. And that's my favorite kind of mechanism in the slasher. So I think when you jettison that, I don't like those ones.
More questions here.
So I know you said that when you wrote the first one, you didn't really think you were gonna write many, but I did see a video that you made recently that you said that you wish you could go to 4 or 5. I can't remember which one you said, Do you already have like, did you finish this book thinking like, okay, I already kind of know if I do?
I have a firm idea for 4. I have no idea for 5. I kind of probably said like I would do them forever if I could. Like I have to kind of justify doing it by having a good idea. And I'm also not like a super disciplined writer. I'm like kind of like lazy, and then the only way I can get myself to finish stuff is if I really like it. So it's kind of like that. Form has to follow function. Like I have to be really excited about an idea. These, you'll see. This is the end for some characters for sure. So like the first 3 form like a loose trilogy, and then the 4th one, the way I envision it. I don't want to say what it is. But the way I envision the 4th one is this idea of the soft reboot of which happens all the time in the slasher. But what if you did that cognizantly? And what if it's like there's not like a bunch of producers involved in this? It's not like a film thing. The slasher franchises go off the rails because different hands, it's different cooks in the kitchen. It's just the Adam Caesar cook in this kitchen. So what if I planned a kind of like this one? Like this one, what I pitched to them, they hated it. They hated that I pitched it this way. But I was like, I want this to be the weird one in the slasher. I want this to be the entry in the franchise. Yeah, I want this to be the entry. Exactly, that was what I said. I was like, in Freddy 2, I wanted this to be the one that fans initially recoil from. That fans that are like, oh, that's the odd one out. That's the strange one for whatever reason. I wanted this to be that. But 15 years later, everyone loves that. Everyone loves Halloween 3. Everyone sees the parallels in Freddy's Revenge. Everyone likes that stuff. And I was like, and then they really got caught up on the fact that I said 15 years later. And I was like, no, but by the end of the book, they'll like it. By the end of the book, they'll like it.
So was there a part in the first book that you started with, or did you start in the middle, or like a specific scene that you
The diner scene between, which is a not killing scene, between Quinn and Glenn, her dad. That's like this book got rewritten so many times, and I struggled with how to tell this story and the best way to structure it and things like that, which is not usually my speed. Like first drafts are pretty good, and then I go which even if they're not, I just trick myself into thinking that, and then I rewrite from there. But like the book was restructured, was rewritten. Like there were many different endings and many different things that happened. But the diner scene was always like, whenever I got to drafting the diner scene, I was like, copy paste. That one's always going to be the same. So I know it's a quieter scene, but I do think it reflects a lot of the themes of the book, and a lot of the relationship between her dad is one of the core relationships in the book. So
We have time for maybe 2 more, if we've got them out there.
There were a million hands, and now there's it.
Sorry. No, I didn't see them. Yeah.
I just really enjoyed from a horror standpoint. First of all, I was very surprised how much violence you got away with, especially in this book, because I read extreme horror, and this was right on the spot.
You read this one already?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you. Ooh yeah, hell yeah. Ooh, it's starting to happen.
I was like, oh, this is good.
Thank you.
But I like what you really do with each book is you do make a social commentary, but you don't beat us over the head with it. And I think
Not a 1-star.
and like you were talking about, they did they did the church,
Yeah.
but you balance that out with that because she's she's going on what she's learned. She's not blindly following
Yeah.
it. So I think that's what really balances it out. But
Tabitha even talks about God holding her up, physically almost.
it sounds cheesy at first when you hear her talk, but then she became one of my favorite characters besides Johnny at the end.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. I love the love for Johnny. Already, you brought him up too. So thank you. Thank you. I love Johnny so much. So I'm glad that I haven't talked to a lot of people who've already read it. So thank you.
And then we'll end with one more from here.
So besides these books, is there anything that you're working on right now that you're excited to talk about?
I'm gonna when you come up, remind me of this because I'm very, very excitable, and I will just want to talk to you and kind of focus on drawing my little clown things. But please take bookmarks, and one of them is a promotional bookmark for my book Influencer, which some of you might have already read/listened to. Yeah, because it's an Audible original, but the paperback version of Influencer comes out October 1st. It is, very briefly, it is about a sociopathic Instagram poet who wants to become the next Charles Manson. He views his followers as his family. And the one girl at school who figured him out because he's a teenager, who figured out that he's doing this and he's planning this. But conversely, I wanted her to be the opposite of Quinn. Crystal, the protagonist of Influencer, is the worst person you could have find this out, because she is almost Hamlet-esque levels of self-consciousness and self-sabotage. And she's more like me. She's less like Quinn and more like a bag of nerves and anxiety like I am. Then it's like, how does someone like that almost chance their way into stopping something horrific from happening? That sounds funny. I know I said Instagram poet, like sociopathic Instagram poet. This is my one book that has a content warning on it. This is pretty significant. So I give that as a caveat. Don't buy it before you open up that first page, read that content warning, and be like, do I want to hang with this? It is still for teens though, so it's for kids. It's the Hudsucker proxy, which everyone, all kids know. So that's that.
Right on. Well, Adam, Cesare.